Welcome to the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I am your host, Courtney Beck, and today we have a Hall of Fame head coach, Valorie Kondos Field, also known to many as Miss Val. Miss Val won 7 NCAA championship team titles, 519 career wins, 18 conference championships, 4 NCAA Coach of the Year awards, Pac-12 Coach of the Century, and she was inducted into the UCLA Athletic Hall of Fame in 2010. It is truly my honor to welcome Valorie Kondos Field.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to say congratulations. And should I call you Dr. Courtney or Dr. Beck or Dr. Courtney Beck or Doc or I want to honor all of the work that you've put in for 7 years to get your doctorate.
No, thank you so much. It's so interesting, like with the both programs I went through, the MBA program and the sport management program, I was so honored to be part of both programs. But at the same time, I will always and forever be Court or Courtney.
Okay.
So you could call me either one, Miss Val. So I do appreciate it.
Well, it's funny because like if I were you, I would say Dr. Courtney or something like that. Because when I teach at UCLA, even though I don't have a master's degree, so I can't teach by myself. And the students are like, are we supposed to call you Professor Miss Val? I'm like, yes. Call me Professor Miss Val.
I love it. Well, maybe now that you say that, I think Dr. Court would be pretty cool. I love that nickname, Court.
Yeah.
All the coaches growing up used to call me Court, Courtney. When I was growing up in my childhood, though, if I ever got in trouble, it was Courtney Ann, which of course is my middle name. So that was the one we wanted to stay away from. But no, please call me Court or Courtney.
Okay. Will do.
So, Miss Val, I am truly thrilled to have you on this podcast. I would love to jump right into it. So, could you please provide us an introduction and a background of yourself?
Sure. Introduction is, as you gave all those accolades, I was the head coach of UCLA Gymnastics for 29 years. I was at UCLA for 37 years. The most fun fact of all of those bragging rights is that I've never done gymnastics. I was a ballerina. And so I got to UCLA in 1982 as the UCLA Gymnastics dance coach and choreographer. And when I graduated, I graduated with a degree in history. And I distinctly remember thinking, I'm going to go be a journalist, either for Glamour magazine, because I liked pretty dresses and stuff, or National Geographic. Like, those two do not go together. But that was my goal. And then the senior women's administrator, senior associate athletic director, called me in her office and just said, we want to make you the new head coach. And I reminded her I didn't know anything about gymnastics. And she literally just looked at me and said, I trust you'll figure it out. And that was all I got. Mm-hmm.
That is an unbelievable story. And we are certainly going to get into your whole gymnastics career because, as you mentioned, professional ballerina to one of the most winningest head coaches in the sport of collegiate gymnastics is truly remarkable. Now, Miss Val, I do have to say, first off, congratulations on your book, published in 2019, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. I love it. I absolutely love it. And you have a statement that I would love to share with the audience, and it speaks to both failure and overcoming obstacles. So, quote, make life your own great adventure. When you think about your favorite adventure stories, you'll realize there is no failure, just obstacles to overcome that then become the most exciting part of the story. So, Miss Val, could you speak to the concept of failure and your perspective on failure?
I was very blessed to have a mom that did not, it's not like we ever talked about failure, but whenever I would make a mistake, I literally was at the Thanksgiving table. It was beautifully set. There's all this food, and I had a glass of milk. And she was telling a story. My mother was speaking, and I did something with my hand, and I spilled milk all over everything. And she did not miss a beat. She was just like, "Oh, honey, get me some towels if you could." And then she kept going with her story. And that that resonates with me so much now when people ask me about this, because she didn't make even a joke about me being clumsy or whatever. It just happened. And I remember hearing life is a journey, like that Hallmark card, you know? No, life
Absolutely.
is a journey. It's not about the destination. And I
Yes.
was like, no, journey is like walk through the park skipping. That's not life. Life is one boulder hitting you after another. And you can either, it's how you react to those. You can either get, why me, become a victim. Why me? Why me?
Mhm.
Um, you can get pissed, or you can go, okay, how are we going to get around, through, over, whatever this? And it's just within the last 2 years, I've been reading Ryan Holiday about stoicism.
Mhm.
And I realized I'm a stoic. It's like, okay, because the obstacle is the way forward. It's not what holds you back. It's getting through that. And the cool part about it is when you do embrace life like that, you're in this constant realm of growth, which to me is fascinating.
I absolutely love that. And when you speak about the concept just of failure, I have to agree. I've always thought of it as not failure, but more so you may make a mistake along the way, but all you are doing is redirecting, hey, that didn't work over there. So let's, go in the other direction. So as long as you never quit, I am such a I just love that quote, just never ever quit. And I do believe that you could learn so much along the way about yourself, about people, about situations. But I never have truly believed about the word failure. I
No,
just perceive it as like a mistake and you're
no,
redirecting.
no. I think I say
Um,
this in my book. It's another F word that somebody made up to make us feel badly about ourselves. The one thing that I
mhm.
noticed, I loved, part of the reason why I loved coaching was I was a true student of the sport, of learning, of leadership, of all of that. And one of the things that I noticed was the great athletes, the
Mhm.
ones that had sustained excellence for over a long period of time, they did not look at mistakes as failure, as negative. They didn't take it personally. They simply looked at a mistake, falling, even multiple times on beam, whatever. They would look at that as information, just as you said, information of what to do better the next time. And so, whenever I'm especially speaking with young athletes, I like to prove to them that the word failure doesn't exist. The concept of failure doesn't exist. Because when you take that moment to think about, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What do I need to do differently this next time? Even if there's that much growth,
Mhm.
how can growth of any measure be failure? It can't. So there is no failure, does not exist. It needs to get out of our vocabulary. It's simply, we make mistakes. Okay, fine. Learn from them and move on.
I absolutely love that. And I couldn't agree more. And so as we move forward, I would love to hear your journey from the very beginning of becoming a professional ballerina, but how you would enter gymnastics in general, not even at the collegiate level yet. So, how did you enter the sport of gymnastics?
That's a great question that a lot of people don't ask me. I was 16 years old and I was dancing. I started getting paid to dance when I was 12. Like, we got paid for Nutcracker and Coppelia and Giselle, and not a lot of money, but if you're, I mean, it qualifies being professional, right? Um, and when I was 16, I wanted a summer job and I loved gymnastics, but my parents would not let me quit taking ballet. I did not love ballet. I was in ballet because I have scoliosis.
Wow.
I was in ballet. I mean, I don't usually talk about this stuff, which I don't know why. It's not bad. I got put in when I was in ballet when I was 7 because the doctor noticed a curvature of my spine, which, I mean, like if you can see, my left side is overly produced. My right side is not. That's where my curve happens. And the doctors told my parents to put me in ballet. So I hated it because I'm not naturally flexible. I don't have turnout. I was told my head is too big and my neck is too short and my feet are too small constantly. So, and I have Greek thighs. Okay. Hello. So I'm not Nastia. And I didn't like it. I hated it. And I wanted to go into gymnastics. And my parents said no, because I was taking piano, I was taking horseback riding, and I was taking ballet, and I was in Campfire Girls. So they're like, we're not adding one more thing. So when I was 16, I called up the local gym, Agileites, Jim Stevenson, who was the head coach up at Minnesota. He was the head coach at Agileites. And I remember us just talking, and he's an artist. Jim is a sculptor. So my dad was an artist. And so we had this connection. And he found out I played the piano. And this is before, in 1980, floor exercise music could be more than one instrument. It could be orchestrated. But before 1980, it could only be one instrument. And that instrument was usually the piano. We also had compulsories and optionals. So I played the piano, oftentimes live for the compulsories. And then I would set up my two little microphones in my living room, and I would edit. I would play music on the piano and record it. And that's how I fell in love up close and personal with the sport of gymnastics, way before I got to UCLA.
That is unbelievable. And what's so interesting is your path into the sport of gymnastics is so unique.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really stood out to me is that in life, like as you would move forward and you would enter into UCLA as a dance choreographer before, of course, becoming the head coach,
Mm-hmm.
there's always people, I feel like, along the way in our life as we reflect back who open a door that we don't realize at the time how impactful it could be towards the trajectory, of course, that it takes us in life. But was there an individual at UCLA that really stands out to you that gave you that opportunity? As you look back, maybe you would not have been at UCLA as a head coach.
I would say, as you're saying all of that, the two people that come to my mind are my parents.
Yeah.
My dad being an artist, I grew up in this lovely world of art where diversity was the norm. Like I would go to my dad's art openings and I was just enamored with all the different dress and garb and how people would show up unique to themselves. Nobody was trying to be anybody else. Nobody was making fun of anybody else. No one was formulating opinion about what somebody else was wearing. And that was how I grew up. That was normal for me, which I loved. And then the second part was my mom, who anything was possible. Like anytime I wanted to do anything except gymnastics, I guess, my mom was like, yeah, go do it. So when I was dancing professionally, when I was 22 years old, had not gone to college, I really missed school, missed being in school. Mm-hmm. When I heard UCLA needed a dance coach for their gymnastics team, UCLA, college, missed college, dance, I got that. And I just called up Jerry Tomlinson, who was the head coach, and I gave him my credentials. And my mom said, you just called him up and asked? I said, yeah, Mom, you're the one that taught me. What's the worst that can happen? You can say no. And why would I take that personally? And it's like, since then, I mean, all the metaphors, you missed 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Wow. So I love telling that part of my story because you miss every ask that you were intimidated to take. You miss out on that opportunity. Had I not picked up the phone, I would have not ended up at UCLA. I would have not have had the career that I had. I would not be speaking with you right now. And I probably would have gone and done something successful somewhere else. But I was so blessed. And people have always asked me, when did you know you wanted to coach? It was like, I never felt like I was a coach. To this day, I never felt like I was a coach. I was a mentor and a leader, the CEO of a program,
Wow.
UCLA Gymnastics. I hired really good people that knew how to coach gymnastics, and I took care of everything else.
Your story is so remarkable because the one thing that stands out to me is you were speaking about the uniqueness, how people used to bring that uniqueness with them and not be afraid to stand out and to be yourself. And with your characteristics, your traits, as well as all really the traits that set you apart, Miss Val, you brought the artistic gymnastics. And I truly believe that like sometimes when you're looking at a job description, for example, you may not meet all the criteria, but at the same time, you could bring so much value and become such an asset to a company, a team, of course, in this case. But it's all about being bold and standing in your uniqueness. And so I love that you brought that up in that story and how that literally that would propel you into the head coaching position.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you were in the head coaching position at UCLA, at the very beginning, almost when your journey has not almost even begun, you were thinking about potentially quitting. So, could you walk the audience through what that journey was like?
Well, we sucked, and we sucked because I sucked, not because of the talent. We always had great talent at UCLA, and you can't win without talent. So I know I was very blessed, but I had no clue what I was doing. I literally just mimicked other head coaches. Now, this was 1989. This is before any discussion of mental health and wellness and all that. This was when the majority of leadership, even parenting, was authoritative. Do it because I said so. I mean, I heard that from my father 8,000 times. Dictatorial, just my way, the highway. And I felt like, well, since I didn't know what I was doing, I'll just act like a head coach. So I literally postured and acted. And I look at myself on some videos and photos. I'm just disgusted with myself because I'm like, and I remember, Dr. Court, I remember being on the competition floor and telling myself, okay, you got to act because these people, they think that you're a stupid ballerina. You don't know what you're doing. So act and pretend like you're this, just act like a head coach. And because I wanted everybody to know I took my job really seriously. It was so ass backwards. The whole thing was just like nonsense. And I love life. I've always loved life. I've always been very interested in life. I thought, well, I suck at this, but maybe there's other things I can go do in life I won't suck at. So I was going to go resign. And it was in that moment, walking through the student store, I picked up Coach Wooden's book on leadership, and I read his definition of success. Success is peace of mind in knowing you've done your best. And I was like, I've been trying to be somebody else. Mm-hmm. Success is peace of mind in knowing you have done your best. I haven't even given myself a shot. So I didn't resign. And I went back to my office and I thought, what do I bring to the table? And like you just said, our sport is called artistic gymnastics. I knew that I could teach movement and performance quality, how to bring movement to life. Mm-hmm. I could teach that as well, if not better than anybody else who was coaching gymnastics. So I'm going to do that really well. I also felt that I could lead young women and had a great mom as an example. Shortly after that, Coach Wooden becomes my mentor. I meet Coach Wooden, he becomes my mentor. And in studying him, in fact, pyramid right there. The cornerstones of his pyramid our industriousness and enthusiasm, attitude and effort. And it's just like you said a little bit ago, it's like going into any field, all you have to do is take a deep breath, exhale, and go, okay, I can bring attitude and effort. I can bring tremendous effort, work ethic, and a great attitude to anything I do. And that's just what gets you going. So whenever I start to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, okay, just have a good work ethic and bring a good attitude. And a lot for me was learning. A lot of my attitude was stop pretending like you know what you're talking about, and ask 100 questions a day. Ask. When an athlete falls off a beam on our series and comes to me and says, "What did I do wrong?" It's like, I have no idea what you did wrong. Let's figure it out. And what I've come to through all of my studies, the best way to teach anything in life is to give a suggestion and then let the person figure it out. Let them stumble, let them fall, let them figure it out on their own. They learn it deeper. They learn it on a deeper cellular level than just being a good, loyal soldier and doing what you tell them to do.
I love that. And there's so many aspects of what you just said that really resonate with me. I feel that a lot of the times when we're beginning anything, you're not going to be the greatest, the best at it, but what you were talking about with just that curiosity and always wanting to learn, I think could truly set you apart. And like you said, bringing the enthusiasm and the energy. We were speaking right before, and there is something about when you walk into a room and it's just positive energy. You could feel just the magnetic energy. And I do think that helps with when you are starting something and you're initially getting those wheels going, so to speak. You're going to learn how to do things and perfect them along the way, but it's going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times we all want overnight success, but the truth of the matter is exactly what you were saying, is you learn as you go through it, and providing that suggestion and allowing, if it is on a team from a head coach standpoint to a athlete standpoint, but they're able to figure it out, like in gymnastics, doing the skill and realizing what the feedback was, and then how the gymnast is actually feeling when they're going through the skill. It takes that experience. So I love what you were saying in that story, because it's so true. I feel a lot of the times you just have to get going and then bringing that enthusiasm, and then it just lines up. So
It's
Miss
not
Beth,
complicated. It's not,
yeah.
people think that coaching, teaching, parenting, leadership, all that,
Mm-hmm.
complicated. It's not complicated, but it's not easy.
Right.
And I feel that the reason it's not easy is because the best leaders model the behavior they want to see from those people whom they're leading. And when you lead from that perspective of modeling the behavior, even as a parent that you want to see from your children, or a coach from their student athletes, or a friend to a friend, when you embrace that and understand the importance of that, you don't get to tap out.
Yeah.
I remember it was Dr. Ani Willis, who I'm so happy for her. She's
Oh,
on Simone's documentary,
that's fun.
Rise. Yeah. And Ani came to me, and I said something to her about, well, Ani, I don't remember if she was having a bad day. I don't remember the impetus of this, but I said, Ani, you don't have a choice because you're the leader. And she goes, I don't want to be a leader. I was like, well, you don't have a choice, Ani. When people follow your lead, that means you are a leader. It's not like you're a self-proclaimed leader. They're following your lead. And I said, why don't you want to be a leader? Because she goes, because then you don't get a day off. You always have to show up. I go, right, right.
I love that. I think there's so much truth to that. And when we speak about when you were a head coach and transitioning into that, you had certain rules as a leader. And I'm so curious to ask you. I'm just going to take a couple from the book, but one of the first ones that resonated with me so much, because I learned this very early on in my gymnastics career: early is on time is late. So, Miss Val, could you speak to that?
Yeah. Um, if you're showing up, if we started workout at 8 o'clock in the morning, if you show up at 8, you've not given yourself time to prepare for the workout. You're running in, putting your stuff down, and then getting going. You don't have that quiet time, that stillness of being able to prepare for the day. You don't have time to go up and go to the restroom and get your leotard on and do your hair again, whatever, make that last phone call. You're literally just running in. And if you can show up at 8, you can show up at 7:50. Okay. It's not rocket science here. And the more the more our student athletes bought into the team and the culture, the earlier they got to the gym. Because part of it was the camaraderie of them wanting to just hang out and check in and chill and hang out with each other. Part of it was they were excited for the workout. It was important to them. And so it, like, maybe early on we would have problems of student athletes being either showing up right at 8 or late.
Sure.
But once they got it, and this is why it's so important to explain and communicate. Explain your reasons why. It's not just because I like that little quip, early is on time is late, so don't be mad. It's not that. There's a reason behind it. Yeah. And let me guess, the next thing you're going to ask me is about the gum.
Yes. And you know what's really funny, even hold on, about the time though, I learned that from my coaches back in Orlando. So Christy and then Jeff Wood, when I was going through, I was probably 12, 13 years old, but we would get out of school early, and the margin of time that we had to get to the gym on time was so small that we would find ourselves, backpacks were on in the actual car and you are just running in. But I remember when our head coaches would talk to us about why it is so important to be on time, it's demonstrating even the respect. If it is in a meeting, you're demonstrating the respect to the other person, as well as, like you said, it's the big picture. It's you're accountable. Like people could rely on you to be there on time in other situations. But I just always do it. When I read this, I went back to my childhood because I literally remember just sprinting up into the gym. But to your point, yes, no gum ever. That is the second rule, Miss Val. Can you please speak to that?
All right. I am making this proclamation again. I don't hate gum. Okay. In fact, I can snap it really, really, really well. If you asked any one of my athletes, especially like the last, 6, 7, 8 years, what's the one thing you learned from Miss Val? They would kind of like do their little head bob and roll their eyes and go, life is about choice, and the choices you make are going to dictate the life you live. And I argued with Coach Wooden a lot because he always said that love is the most important word in our language. And I feel that choice is the most important word in our language because you can choose to love or not. And so I always wanted our student athletes to just know what choices they're making, how they are choreographing their lives. And gum, just like the ubiquitous hair tie on the wrist, if you like it there, great. But at least know it's there. If you are chewing gum and you don't mind how you look chewing gum, great. But I just want you to know when you're going into an interview or you're going into a press conference or you're on TV or whatever, if you don't want to be chewing gum, at least know that it's in your mouth. Or at least I have been in 2 black tie events where a woman at the podium was giving the speech. One was accepting it, one was giving it. Gorgeous suit, hair tie, black hair tie. I was like, did she put that on? Like, does she know it's there? So that was a big part of the gum thing. Plus, I didn't want to be gum police. You know, you're traveling with, I don't know, 20, 25 young women. And I don't want to say, oh, you chew it fine. I don't hear you. You can chew it. You can't because you chomp and you blow bubbles. And so I don't want to be gum police. So just no gum.
I love it.
But
It,
the
yeah, no,
important part is in leadership is to explain it.
absolutely.
And one other thing, I know you love quotes.
Yeah.
Okay. What people don't know about you, they make up. And so if I'm not going to explain why the no hair ties, early as on time is like, if I don't explain it, it's natural for them to make up my truth. And I don't want anybody making up my truth.
That's so true. And I feel like with the gum, it truly is the presentation that you give off. Just like you said, going to a black tie affair, you have a gorgeous dress on, everything else. And I know you mentioned obviously the hair tie, but if somebody's chewing gum, it could take away from one's presence too,
Right.
as well. And then the last one, and I really love this one because I am all about being present and in the moment. No phone at team meals.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if it's just because I'm older. Like I'm 60, going to be 65 next month. And I remember growing up without phones. Obviously, we didn't have phones.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have cordless phones growing up. And so all of the things that I did, my generation did, we went outside and we played.
Yeah.
We had conversation at the dinner table. We would sit in the airport with each other and talk. Now they talk through Snapchat, sitting right next to each other. And so I just feel like most things in life, the pendulum has swung so far with the phone that to give a younger generation an opportunity to feel what it feels like to be truly present in a meeting, in a conversation. And that doesn't mean even going to dinner and putting your phone down, right? Or the watch is the worst because it's so easy just to look at whatever came in. Well, you're not dialed in. You're not listening. You're not attentive. You're not 100% there.
Yeah.
You have tapped out for that little bit, that little moment. And it's a lovely feeling to not be attached to any device, especially the phone. So it's like people say, I'm not attached to my phone. I go for walks all the time. Oh, what do you do on your walk? Oh, I talk to my friends. I listen to podcasts. I'm like, well, you're still on your phone. It's still a device. It's okay. I think it's super important in life to be intentional with moments of stillness and calm and quiet, which is the biggest skill. The most important skill we need to learn is listening. And you cannot listen truly if your mind is thinking about the next thing you want to say or what it's a skill, and it's a very important communication skill. So yeah, that was the no phones thing.
I love that because there's several things I was thinking about as you were talking about this today. Just like you said, being present and offering another just time and being in that moment, listening could really provide such a strong connection that I do personally feel we are all lacking. Because just to your point, when you have the phone even next to you, it is that idea if it does another notification pops up, it sidetracks you for even a split second. And so
Mm-hmm.
you lose that focus. And that connection, I'm all about connection and communication. And Miss Val, like I said, in this situation, we could still see each other, but I've spoken about this a lot with others that have been on the podcast, but the importance of body language and being able to truly see another human being. And this is why I always talk about, if I could be in person, I'm always there in person, because you lose the ability to not have that ability to really connect with somebody, but not even connect, to understand them, because there could be so many miscommunications that we have. Like if we're just texting and I texted you something and you may have misinterpreted it. So being on a phone, or more so, like I said, if there is an opportunity to be in person, I am all about it. So I love that rule. When I read it, I had to ask you what your particular perspective was. And as we move forward, speaking of all-time greats, you have certainly mentioned him in this podcast. So Coach John Wooden was a very special friend of yours. Now, during the time that you were able to speak with him, to really get to know him, what were some important lessons that he may have taught you just about life? What did you learn from Coach John Wooden?
Well, just as you're asking that question, the first thing that came to me was Coach was always the same. He was never high, he was never low. And that's what he used to tell his athletes as well. Don't get too high, don't get too low, just stay the course. And me, having come from stage, whenever I would be in the parking lot and getting ready to go into a competition, into the arena, I remember going, okay, showtime, here we go. And I felt like I had to be on, which was draining for that amount of time. And I remember looking at Coach, because I used to take him football, basketball, gym. I mean, I took him everywhere, dinners, everywhere. And he was always the same. And part of it was, okay, he was 80 something years old, but he was like this. The most important leadership lesson I learned from Coach, because people ask me all the time, what's the best advice he ever gave you?
Yeah.
And the best advice is just getting back to the style of coaching, of giving a suggestion and then letting people figure it out. It was the morning of 9/11, and I was driving to work, and I heard on the news the horribleness that happened. And it was the very first day that our whole team was going to be meeting for that season.
Mm-hmm.
And I had planned what our team meeting was going to be about, right? Go over the student athlete handbook, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden that's out the window, because now this horrific thing has happened on our soil. And so I got nothing for this team meeting. So I called up Coach. I go, Coach, I got nothing. And he says to me, oh, honey, just listen to and trust your heart. And I said, no, Coach, you don't get it. Just give me like a something to say to them, okay? That's going to put their minds and their hearts at ease. And he says, I said, just give me something. And he goes, oh, honey, just listen to and trust your heart. And inside I'm going, thanks for nothing, Coach. I'm like, okay, I love you. Talk to you later. Huh? And I go into the meeting, and Carly Rabb says to me with tears coming down her face, first of all, Kristen Maloney was flying out of Pennsylvania the night before. And we didn't know if she had been on that flight that went down.
Wow.
And so I had been trying to get a hold of her, whatever. Kristen shows up for this meeting. We're all just like sobbing. Yay, yay, yay. She's here and alive and well. And Carly Rabb says, Miss Val, what we do, gymnastics, is so trivial compared to what's happening in our world, in our country. I don't think I can go in that gym today and train. In fact, I don't think I can ever go back in a gym and do gymnastics, play a sport.
Oh.
And she says, why would we do that? And in that moment, listening to my heart, I understood. I knew the answer. And it was very simple. It's because we can. because we live in a country that protects our freedoms, especially as women, to get an education and to play sports in a leotard, mind you, not in a burqa, in a leotard.
Absolutely.
So not only are we going to go in that gym, but we're going to go in that gym with a renewed appreciation and gratitude than you've ever had before in our entire lives. And we're going to give, the way that we're going to thank those people that have protected our freedoms is to give 100% of what we have today in that gym. And the reason why Coach Wooden's non-advice was brilliant is because had he told me what to say, I would have trusted his words more than my words.
Yeah.
And his words would not have rung true in that environment, in that moment. So his best advice to me was no advice. And I think that that's really, like, when somebody asks, and it kind of goes along with, he always used to say the worst thing you can do for someone is, or a child especially, is those things that they can and should do for themselves. And it kind of goes along with that. It's like he was helping me learn how to be a better coach by not holding my hand along the whole way and puppet mastering me. And be quite honest, I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. That's what I've done with Jordan. You know, when she first got here, people thought I was puppet mastering the program. I'm not it's Jordan's program. I'm simply here for her to bounce things off of. And there have been so many times when she's called me and asked me, and I could give her advice, but the best I can do for her is to simply ask her a question. Well, Joe, what's the outcome you want? What is your goal? How are you going to feel if this happens? And let her figure it out. And that is what I learned from Coach Wooden.
I love that. And it reminded me of times in my life when we all have the answer within us. And to your point, asking others for advice, you could pull different pieces of information from that. But at the end of the day, when you come back, and for me, it's always in a quiet place where I could really think through my thoughts, but you have the answer within you. And I think that's so powerful, as to literally the advice or not the advice that he had provided you, because you were able to then really understand what you were going to tell the team and how you were going to move forward with such meaning and impact as you would move forward. And so,
Courtney, you have mentioned a few times, and before we even started recording this, about stillness.
yes.
And I mentioned Ryan Holiday and the fact that I'm a stoic. And this is one of my favorite books, Stillness is the Key.
I love it.
And the truth is, and this is why the no phone thing is important also, is how can we expect ourselves to have clarity when our minds are being bombarded with so much stimulus? Even if it's music on in the background, even whatever it is, the phone, like checking your phone constantly to see what's going on. There is not, the only time we can truly have clarity, and the research has shown, especially when you go out for a walk with any stimulus, it ignites and it opens the brain waves for creativity. That doesn't happen when there's a bunch of noise. It happens in stillness. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of gratitude. And I do believe that gratitude has become my default. I don't think a moment of the day goes by without me taking a micro pause and being grateful for something. And somebody said to me the other day, they said, well, I can't just keep stopping throughout my day to have these enumerate gratitudes. And I'm like, and I timed myself multiple times to prove this person wrong. I was like, it takes less than a second to take a micro pause and to give thanks for the fact that I live in a country that's allowing me to be right here and talking to you. Thank you.
Yes.
I have it's cold and it's water and it's fresh and it's clean. And I have as much of this as I'd like. Yeah. That is, as we all know now, it's igniting the happy chemicals in my brain, but it's also giving me a moment of pause and stillness.
I love that. I relatively recently, I wrote a blog about gratitude and how literally the things that you were saying, they resonate so much because in this world today, there's so much noise, there's so much distractions, and living in the consumerism society that we are living in, you could always desire or want more. The
Yeah.
newest, latest fashion, new technology, new gadgets. But journaling to me is so important to be able, just like you said, to kind of reflect on what you do have in life, the people in your life that positively impact your life, the things that allow you to do what you're doing. I mean, even just sitting here on a podcast, I have a computer to be able to speak with you, but being grateful for the small things, because
Mm-hmm.
I do believe when I write stuff down, the things that when you wake up the next morning and you thought you needed, you actually in reality don't need at all. It's just being very grateful for where you're at, and to your point, the freedom to do the things that we can in this country. So I'm so happy that you mentioned that. And transitioning, I do want to mention once again, you won 7 national championship team titles. Number one, congratulations, Miss Val. That is truly an accomplishment. My gosh, to win one national championship is something. And so I want to relive, and there's a purpose for this. I'm definitely going to mention to the audience, but I would love to understand your mindset, what it was like going into the 2010 national championships, because my perspective for the audience, if you do not know me, my background lies in gymnastics. I was a former elite level gymnast and I competed for the University of Florida. And that happened to be during Miss Val's tenure at UCLA as a head coach of the women's gymnastics team. So this is an interesting dynamic that we have going on here, but I'm just so curious. The 2010 national championship site was in fact Gainesville, Florida. So Miss Val was welcomed into the swamp that year. So what was it like, Miss Val?
Well, Courtney, Chomp, uh, walking into that arena in 2010 was really fun because I had a bunch of flashbacks to 1997 when we won our first national championship at the University of Florida.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And I didn't either. And when you said that just now, I'm like, hold on. We were I was there before we won our first championship there.
That gives me chills.
And any collegiate environment that's a big time collegiate environment is so much fun to compete in. You know, yes, there is a home crown advantage. Yes, all that, which they, don't have now. But it was great fun to be in a big time, big university, massive, sold out arena for the championships.
That is so exciting. And when you won that championship, what did it mean to you in that moment? During that season, all teams go through ups and downs, of course, injuries occur. Was there anything that really stands out that held true meaning for you?
Yeah. The first two things that come to mind is Brittany McCullough. She ended up being the national floor champion that year. Brittany is the first student athlete to go through the nursing program at UCLA. And the reason why other students had not is because of the strict adherence to the class schedule. And so Brittany, we trained at 8. Brittany had to come in and train at 6 because she couldn't get excused from classes that were right smack in the dab in the middle of our training. And the really, really cool part about that is slowly one of the girls would come in and train with Brittany. And then another girl would come in and train with Brittany. And we had almost the entire team, maybe the ones that had class themselves that couldn't get there, were showing up to honor
Oh,
Brittany McCullough, who wanted to achieve great things in all areas of her life. And so that was really, really, I mean, as you can imagine, as a head coach, seeing that, very special. And then the second thing that happened, it was Anna Lee's senior year. And Anna was just negative Nancy. I mean, she was just, I apologize for everybody whose name is Nancy. We need to stop saying that, okay? Anna was just like a victim. Like, why me? You know, everybody hates me. I don't have any friends. Like, and so the beginning of that year, we were at Woodward, and she and I were walking to dinner, and she was saying, complaining about something else. I said, Anna, could you just choose happy? It's not that difficult. Just choose to be happy. Stop blaming everybody else for your problems. Just choose to be happy. It's not that hard. She literally changed like that.
wow.
And she went from someone that the girls liked but didn't want to hang out with. They loved her that year. She was their captain, one of their captains that year, to the point of Anna was our best beam worker. She was 6th in the lineup on beam. And we had really good beam competitors, but we were inconsistent. Anna said, put me first. And I said, well, Anna, if you go first, it may compromise your score, because not always, but scores usually escalate. And she says, I don't care. It's more important that our team does well. And so at the national championship that year, we did vault bars, then went to the locker room for the bye, and then we came out on beam. And we weren't doing so great the first 2 events. I don't remember what place we were in, but it's not like we were crushing it. And then we come out, and she starts us off on beam. And right before her dismount, she improvises, turns to her teammates in the corral and does like a little dance and a wink to them, and then turn and does her dismount. They went crazy. And that was the vibe that she infused in her teammates that allowed us to go on and win that championship.
I just love that. And I believe when you talk about choosing happiness and how much energy that could come out of that, and how it really is, it's like a magnetic energy that others want to be part of it. They want to be part of that enthusiasm. And so I do have to say, Miss Val, congratulations on that win. It was certainly well deserved. And it really was. I mean, I remember that was my senior year. And I look back, and during those 4 years, I was a walk on, and I was just so grateful to be there, part of the team, because it changed the whole trajectory of my life. As you know, and how you developed, and like champions for life.
Mm-hmm.
The confidence that was instilled in me through that sport and through my coaches, that's something I'll never be able to thank them enough, because I think it really shaped the trajectory where I am today. So I'm always so grateful when I think about the sport of gymnastics, what it gave me, and especially at the collegiate level. And
Courtney, who were your coaches then?
so
Was Rhonda was there?
Yes, yes. So Rhonda Fain was the head coach. Assistant coaches were Robert Ladani and
Right.
Adrian
Okay.
Burdett.
Okay.
And we always had a blast in practice. It was such a great mixture of personalities. There was some strict coaching, but then there was also that like having fun. It was such a vibrant energy. I just
Mm-hmm.
loved going to practices, even though, of course, we know sometimes practices could be tough. But I fell in love with the sport at such a young age, and was honored to be on that team. But as we move forward, I do feel it's so important to always recognize that there are going to be challenges along the way that we have to endure. And for you, when I was reading your book, you were diagnosed with cancer in spring of 2014. So, would you be able to walk the audience through? Because as you read your book, you had such a positive attitude, Miss Val. And I just want to learn more about your thought process and your perspective as you were going through this time.
Well, part of it was, as I said, my mom and how I was brought up. It's like, you can sit and have a pity party and wallow in it. And how's that going to feel? Until you're not going to feel better until you get yourself out of that. So
Right.
however long you want to sit in that is up to you. When I was diagnosed, when I got the call from my doctor, and my brain exploded in fear, because the last time I'd gone through anybody in my family having cancer was my mother, who died a horrible, horrible, horrible death with colon cancer. And so I just immediately went, well, that's what everybody goes through in cancer. So fear, fear, fear. But I heard in that cacophony of very loud fear and noise, I heard God whisper, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And true confessions, I got really snarky with God. And I said, I don't know if you heard or not, but I have a potential fatal tumor in my breast. So this thing, be anxious for nothing. Yeah, that's not really sitting well. And grateful for all things. I don't think so. Okay. And I heard it twice. Be anxious for nothing. It was a whisper, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And when I went home and told my husband about the cancer, and, he was sad to hear that. And then I told him about God, what God said to me twice. He goes, God in his infinite wisdom knew he had to tell you twice so you would shut up and listen. It's like, very true. Very, very true.
Wow.
But I understood this as a commandment. I had never read the Bible before. My husband goes and tells me, go, it's in the Bible, Philippians 4. I go read it. I'm blown away because I'm like, I heard this before I ever read it. This is not a suggestion. This is a commandment. But I didn't know how I was going to obey the commandment because I was scared out of my mind. So I went to the doctor, and she said, and this is important for everyone that's listening to this, because sadly, we're all going to be in a position where we're going to have to deal with this horrible disease, whether it's with people we know, friends, family, ourselves, whomever. It hits everybody, okay? It doesn't hit everyone, but I don't believe there's somebody on face earth that doesn't know somebody up close that's had to go through cancer. And my doctor said to me, it's 2014. If you'd gotten diagnosed in 2004, I would have had to say to you, I'm so sorry. We have nothing for you. You need to go get your affairs in order. You have about 2 months to live. But because I was diagnosed in 2014, she said, if you choose to get chemotherapy for a year, another reason why I love that word choose and choice. Yeah. And if you choose to have surgery, we know it's going to work. I was like, I understood the commandment of how I was going to not be anxious through this whole year of chemo and surgeries was through gratitude. I keep hitting that refresh button on gratitude. I don't have to get chemotherapy. I get to get chemotherapy because I live at a time that has the chemo, and I live in a country that has a chemo, and I have a job, a health insurance going to help me pay for the chemo. I was so excited to get poison shot through my veins every other Thursday. I called it going to my chemo spa. And one of my athletes, I think it was Ariana Berlin, said to me one time, Miss Val, you don't have to put such a positive spin on it. I said, it is a positive spin because even though it makes me feel like crap, it's giving me more days. How cool is that?
Wow. That is so powerful. And the idea of gratitude and having such a positive attitude. I wanted to read part of your book. You mention, quote, a peer-reviewed article appearing in the Canadian Medical Association Journal looked at 16 different studies spanning 30 years for a variety of ailments, and the research absolutely confirmed that patients who expressed positive expectations had better health outcomes and faster recovery times. That is amazing. And the power of positivity.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And we hear that, we know those studies are out with children. When children are labeled smart or excel students, they excel.
Wow.
It's just the power of the mind. We cannot limit the power of them. I don't think anybody of us know the power of our minds. And so I always tell people, what do you have to lose by thinking positively?
That's,
Even if it doesn't turn out, who cares? You got nothing. There's no negative that comes from it.
that,
That's what I used to tell girls when they, would fall off beams. I'm like, what are you telling yourself? They say, well, I'm up there the whole time saying, don't fall, don't fall. I'm like, well, don't is a negative word and fall is a negative word. So stop that. Okay. You can't also just tell yourself not to think about something. You have to replace it with something else. So replace it with something positive. Like, I got this. And I remember one of my athletes going, but I'm still afraid and I don't know if I got it. I said, who cares? Just say it over and over and over and over and over. Like, what harm is going to come from it? I
that,
got this. So you fall. Who cares? Eventually, you're not going to fall because your body's going to believe it.
wow, that's so powerful. So would you ultimately say that the power of positivity really helped you through that time from when you were diagnosed with cancer to like as you went through it? Would you
Mm-hmm.
contribute it to the power of positivity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember at 100%. Oh my gosh, 100%. Um, I was so grateful that I lived at a time that had the medicine. And then get this, the next year I was asked to speak at the Johnson Cancer Research Foundation. And the gentleman that spoke before me was Dr. Slayman, Shane, whatever that, okay, I'm having a brain fart right now. Slayman. Anyway, he developed the Herceptin, which was part of the chemo that saved my life.
Wow.
And he's speaking, and I'm realizing that all the people in this room are the ones that raised the money for the research that allowed him to do his research. So then they announced me to get up there and speak. And I can barely put two words together because I'm connecting all these dots. These people in this room saved my life because they raised the money that gave to that doctor that allowed him to invent Herceptin, which saved my life. Whoa.
That's powerful.
It was so serendipitous that I was there when he was there. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
But, even the yucky, crappy, shitty stuff that's happened in my life, if you don't learn from it, it just is crappy, shitty stuff.
Yeah.
So why not learn from it?
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Even the bad times, making those times valuable through looking at it through a different lens, a positive lens. Like you said, what could I learn from this? It
Mm-hmm.
was a yucky situation, but
Mm-hmm.
how can I make it valuable to my life as I move forward?
Right.
So I
Right.
completely agree. And Miss Val, I have to ask you from your perspective of being a head coach for 29 years at UCLA, what are your thoughts and regarding collegiate gymnastics and the direction that it is set for the future? What do you believe is going to come of collegiate gymnastics in this very moment?
I believe that sport is going to go through a massive NCAA sport is going to change drastically starting this second. These next 2 years with NIL, with the lawsuits that have to be figured out, with the amount of money that athletic departments are going to have to pay out. Sadly, I believe, and everybody believes, that a lot of programs are going to be dropped. I am hopeful that gymnastics will not suffer as many losses or any, and that part of that is because of our TV ratings. We really are like football, men's basketball, gymnastics as far as ratings. I don't know. That was at least when I was coaching. I haven't followed up in the last few years, but I know like with softball and women's basketball, gymnastics is right up there, and it's all about money. Sadly, money is the root of all evil, or whatever. And as long as we can keep viable, as long as people will want to tune into us on TV in particular, we should be able to thrive, not just survive.
Sure.
And I'm hopeful for that. I'm very, very, very concerned about NCAA athletics because when I was coaching, it truly was one of the last bastions as far as true team sport. There was no I in team in
Mhm.
college. And now with NIL, there is I. It's called NIL. And it's changed that landscape a lot, sadly.
Absolutely. And I think my perspective is when you look at both sides of it, speaking from personal experience as to what you were just saying, during 2007 to 2010, when I was a collegiate gymnast, that time really impacted my life for the positive because there was such a powerful team dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that when you stepped up on that apparatus, you had your team behind you the whole way. And I get chills about it. I always go back. It was 2010, it was the SEC championships. And I competed in vault and beam, but beam was the third rotation, and we were not up at the, on the top of the leaderboard by any means. But I started the team off. And as you had mentioned, from that first person, you have to continue to build those scores. But I'll never forget, I get chills thinking about it. It was a solid routine and I nailed the landing and I'll never forget. I ran off the podium. I was so excited. And I think about it to this day, like the excitement, the sheer joy to run back into, the little podium and really celebrate with your team because it was all about the team. It was not about any individual. When you talk about maybe NIL with certain deals and sponsorships for an individual, it was all about the team. So I definitely resonate with what you're talking about and how it is certainly changing as far as the landscape for sure.
And I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound like I'm against NIL.
Sure.
I just feel like with most things in life, the pendulum has swung too far.
Absolutely.
And we've got to come back to
Yeah.
what makes sense. I keep thinking about in football the offensive line. How
Mhm.
many NIL deals is the offensive line getting? But the second string quarterback who's not even playing
Yeah.
is making over $1 million because they need that second string quarterback. And the offensive line is like protecting multimillionaire guy when they're not getting it. Like, how's that
Absolutely.
fair? So
Sure.
I don't have the answer. I'm not in it on a day-to-day basis, so I haven't put a lot of thought into it. But I do believe that there can be a happy medium with this.
No,
And
absolutely.
Ed O'Bannon, he's the basketball coach at UCLA that started the lawsuit with the NCAA for NIL. He said this is never what he envisioned. It simply was stop selling my jersey in the student store when I'm not making a dime. Stop selling Troy Aikman's jersey and not giving him some residuals. So
Sure.
even he will say the pendulum has swung too far.
No, that's so interesting. And going back to your time on the team as a head coach, Miss Val, you have such a reputation for developing champions. And even from my perspective, being on another team, all the girls and the whole gymnastics community would always speak about how you always cared for the individual before the athlete. And you were always concerned about their mental health, especially those elite athletes that you recruited, who, as we know at the elite level, it is hours upon hours training, and some of which, some gymnasts come to college broken, both mentally and physically. But how did you, as a head coach, take those individuals and ignite that fire back in them at the collegiate level when they entered your program?
That's a really great question, and one that I've thought about a lot since I retired. It really was taking the time to develop relationship and to listen to them and have hard conversations, tough conversations. I remember with Jeanette Antolin, she just said to me, I don't want anybody to ever tell me what to do ever again. I was like, well, okay, that's not how the world works. Why do you feel that way? Blah, blah, blah. And that attitude kept permeating. She kept doing stuff through the course of the year that got her kicked off the team. And I never removed an athlete from the team without putting a lot of thought and heart, discussion with the assistant coaches, and prayer about it, because I don't like the term tough love, but strong, honest love. And I remember Jeanette sitting in my office and me telling her she's not going to be on the team, which means you're not going to have a scholarship, and her being stunned at first and pissed at me, and then just sobbing when she realized I wasn't joking. But I remember, as hard as that was, I remember feeling, I do feel that this is the best thing for her. And I do believe that this is going to be the best year of her life, if her parents don't rescue her, if she has to figure things out on her own. And she did. She got 2 jobs. She stayed in school. She loved gym. She started going to rec gymnastics in the afternoons, which was so weird because she didn't want to train in the morning, right? Because she didn't like that disciplined type of training. So she went in the afternoons to rec. And I remember Jamie Dancher came in my office about 6 months later, and she goes, "Miss Val, you need to let Jeanette back on the team." And I was like, "It hasn't even been a year." She goes, "No, Miss Val, she's really changed. She's even torn up her fake ID." I was like, "Oh, okay." But she had changed that, like that. And when I asked her about it later, I said, "You hated me, Jeanette. What was it?" She said, "I went home and I told my mother how horrible you were." And she said, "My mom listened to me. And then my mom said, okay, Miss Val's a horrible bitch. Fine. What part of this did you play a part of, though?" And she said her mom didn't allow her to be a victim in this, which she stopped blaming me, stopped focusing on me, and just started figuring out her life. And she ended up making her way back on the team. She was a fabulous team member. And we've been really close ever since.
That's incredible. And I think to your point, when bad things happen in our life, just in the situation that you were mentioning, getting kicked off a team, but in those hard times, I do think it's so important not to feel bad for yourself, like you said, playing the victim, but instead you have an opportunity to come back stronger than ever. I am just all about that mentality of you're going to have to take time. Maybe it's months, maybe it's even years, but you reset, you push the reset button. You think about maybe how you could change and develop to become an even stronger person, maybe more knowledgeable in whatever area of study it is that you're pursuing. But it's so important just not to be that victim, but you still have that opportunity to recognize those lessons and move forward so much stronger. So,
well, and the metaphor for you using the reset button is one that I love, because it's just like on your computer, when you hit that reset, all the junk disappears and only the good stuff is left. So I always think about that with my own personal reset button. It's like, what noise am I listening to that's not serving me well? And part of that is a victim mentality. Poor me, why me? They said this about me. Okay, who cares? That's not serving me. So reset, go away. Let's focus on the stuff that's going to help me take that next right step forward. What's that next right step?
I love it. I love that analogy, Miss Val. I'm going to have to use that moving forward. I'll
Please do.
definitely give you credit.
You don't have to. It's fine. I probably stole it from somebody else. It's fine.
No. So, Miss Val, what are you up to these days? You have retired from gymnastics in 2019. But what are the exciting adventures? I just don't see you retiring. I see you have so much energy.
I am living life very fully. I'm doing a lot of speaking. I spoke a few months ago at NASA. I just love to say that. Like,
that's fantastic.
That is such like bragging rights right here. Yes.
I love it.
Especially because I have no engineering brain at all. But it was one of the most impactful, life altering experiences of my life, being in that environment. And I'm just doing a lot of speaking. Spoke at Chick-fil-A, and I'm speaking at Sam's Club tomorrow, and whatever. I'm teaching a course at UCLA, a master's course on the philosophy of coaching and leadership. I'm starting a leadership course at the University of Arkansas in October. I am one of 4 producers and the supervising choreographer for the Simone Biles Gold Over America tour, coming to a city near you.
Love it.
We have gotten 2 different companies that are bidding now to produce a documentary on our 2018 national championship, which statistically is the greatest comeback in team sport history. Statistically, bigger comeback than Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. And also when you Google sport teams comeback stories, it's all male. It's all men. So there's no women's stories out there. So we've got 2 companies that are really excited to do this. I'm doing that. I think most people that know anything about me know that I want to develop a film, an urban nutcracker. And I just have to spend time doing that. And I am very concerned about our environment and our planet. And I want to develop either a Broadway show or an animated film about the environment in plastic, and it's called Trash. Isn't that great?
I love that. And I could feel your passion about that. So, wow, you have so many things going on, Miss Val. Congratulations. I'm thinking about what you were talking about with that 2018 win, national championship win. And to be able to speak about one of the greatest comebacks in sport, that is so powerful. What did you particularly learn at that 2018 national championship? What was something that really stood out to you to overcome?
First of all, I thought it was Providence. I thought, because we were in 5th place going to the last event, balance beam. We had to average a 9.95. There was not one student athlete that had competed on the 5 other teams before us that had gotten a 9.95. We had to get 5 to tie. And then our first athlete goes up, PRs, Madison Koshin goes up, falls. Next athlete up, transfer from Southern Illinois, has never competed at a national championship in her life, Braille win, not even in club. She's following Olympic gold medalist that fell. She PRs, and on and on. So after that, I thought God put on his blue and gold and wanted the Bruins to win, which is ridiculous because I don't believe in that. And when I started talking about it a lot and analyzing it, I realized it was the fact that we had developed, as Kyla Ross says, an indomitable culture. And I said, why do you choose that word? She goes, because resilient is like you do something and it doesn't work, so you just keep doing it again and again and again. Indomitable is this will inside of you that you can't not be successful. And then I asked a group of them, Pang, Joe, Kyla, Grace, Felicia. I said, what was that culture made out of? And this was what was so interesting to me. They said respectful honesty. That was something that I just jammed down their throats, that stop trying to be liked. Mm-hmm. Be honest in a very respectful way. Respectful honesty, gratitude daily. We started every single practice with gratitude. Grace, which a lot of people don't like that word because they think it's religious. They're not religious. They don't like it. Grace means I am giving you the benefit of the doubt that you were not trying to hurt me or trying to be a shithead or trying to be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I think our society could really use a lot of lessons in, especially with social media these days. And then compassion. And compassion is when you put an action to empathy. Compassion, as I mentioned earlier on in this, is when the girls started showing up one at a time to train with Brittany McCullough at 6 a.m. in the morning. That is empathy, is feeling for her that she's got to train by herself 2 hours before everybody else trains.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion is putting an action to that empathy. And as we started talking about all this with some of the girls on the team, I realized that those were the values that created the gridiron for our cultural foundation. That is how we won this national championship. And I could take you through it, but we don't have time. That last event, balance beam, I didn't say one word. I have a cue with every student athlete, like KJ Kindler, right? It looks like she goes through the whole routine with her athletes. And it works for them. I had one cue, and like for Grace Glenn, it was, okay, Grace, here we go. Tap into your inner bitch. And then her eyes would go zzz, and I knew she was locked in. And I went to say that to her. She grabbed my hands and she looks at me and she goes, Miss Val, I got this. I did not say a word. And the same thing happened with every single one of them. I literally went up on the podium. I grabbed their hands to give them their cue. They would stop me and they would say, like, Miss Val, oh, I'm going to crush this. And I like fist bump, wink, left. And then with Pang, I always used to tell Pang, slow down your dance, because she's like the Energizer Bunny up there. She's like, spin double. And I would always say, slow down your dance. And before I could say anything, she goes, Miss V, this is the last performance I'm ever going to do in my entire career competitively. And I am going to enjoy every single moment. I was like, oh. So when people ask me what was my best coaching I did in my career, it's when I didn't say anything, because we had built the culture. We had built the trust. And by me not saying anything, told them I trusted them and they could trust each other. And think about this as an athlete, Courtney. If I had led from my ego and felt, no, the head coach has to say something, every one of those athletes would have played that much too tight, trying to be perfect. We won by the smallest margin in NCAA history because I said nothing.
Wow.
And I do believe, had it been like 5 years earlier, I don't think I would have had that maturity as a head coach to not say anything. I think I would have said, no, I have to say something. I got to do my job. I got to say something.
That is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
First off, congratulations on that 2018 win. And as we close the podcast, we always love to end on a positive note. This podcast has been so positive, Miss Val, but do you have a quote maybe for our audience?
Yeah, I have lots of quotes for our audience. Here, hold on. Can you see that?
Oh,
yes, no?
Almost. Yep, just a little bit over, a little bit more. There we go. Anxious for nothing and grateful for all things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, literally, when God tells you that before you even ever read it,
yes,
it's powerful. Yeah. And I think about that all the time because it's very mellifluous and it rolls off the tongue. Be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. It's like a Hallmark card. But ever since I heard it, I've tried to prove, not God wrong, but God, that's arrogant, but try to prove that there are some times that you need to be anxious. And I've spoken with military about this, and I've spoken with surgeons about this. One of my very dear friends is a baby heart surgeon. Wow. And he says, oh, no. Anxiety paralyzes you. Any type of that anxiousness, it paralyzes your ability to think clearly and move quickly. And when you think about it, there is not one instance in our lives where being anxious is going to help the situation.
Right.
And in those moments, instead of feeding into any anxiety, getting back to what we've talked about a lot here, if we can feed the gratitude, that's what gives us the clarity of how to move forward. So that's something I tell myself multiple times a day.
100%. And I could definitely resonate with that because there's so many times when we enter into new chapters of our life and you do get a little bit anxious because it's uncertain. You don't know where you're headed. But at the same time, I think what has always relaxed me and made me feel a more so calm than anything was being grateful for that moment of where I am in life, looking back even in what you've achieved, looking where you would like to go, but not necessarily spending so much time in the future because it's true. Like it's uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen, but truly being grateful in that moment. So Miss Val, thank you so much for that quote, but thank you. And more importantly, for coming on the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I truly want to say from the bottom of my heart, Miss Val, you are a coach that has truly positively impacted not just the sport, but so many lives in the sport. The sport has truly transformed with your presence in it. And I'm so grateful to know you and to be able to see all of the greatness that you've produced, like I said, not only in the sport, but with the athletes that have come through your program. So truly, thank you for everything you have done, Miss Val.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.